All hail the Outback Era. That's right, this week's all about the beginning of a new era for the X-Men, with issues 228 through 238 of Uncanny X-Men and X-Men Annual 12. Based on what we got from this batch, I hope this era continues for a while, because these first 11 issues are fantastic. They're such a fun refresh on the X-Men without having a completely new team. There are two major arcs in this week's batch: the return of the Brood and the introduction of Genosha. Both of these are great arcs. It had some pretty surprising moments, but before we get to them, I want to cover the first four issues, which are all about the X-Men getting settled after the events of Fall of the Mutants and the X-Men's apparent death. We have a flashback issue with the surprise return of OZ Chase the Bounty Hunter. From the later Dazzler issues, the X-Men taking the shit out of some cyborg neo-Nazis and taking their base for themselves. The team pulling a Santa, returning some jewelry stolen by the previous inhabitants, and a surprise New Mutants issue with Colossus helping his sister. Within these, we have our first Gyrich appearance since Storm lost her powers, I think, and the introduction of the Siege Perilous, a doorway that can allow those who enter it to be reborn into a new life based on the actions of their previous one. I know this item becomes a recurring object for the X-Men, but I'm surprised to see it appear so early, so I have to imagine it's going to come into play as a major plot point soon-ish. Now, this is Claremont we're talking about, so that could be anywhere from our next event, Inferno, to a random arc in like 25 issues. Half the team also got new outfits as well, which look really nice. Shout out to Storms and Psylocke specifically. I kind of love these outfits. Rogue's is fine, but once again is improved with an open jacket or a shirt over top. Her look really is the equivalent of a toothpick changes everything. As for the actual content of these issues, I don't have a lot to say. It's just all pretty great. A lot of stuff I do have to say is stuff I've talked about before in previous episodes that continues to be good. The characters, the art, the writing, it's pretty consistently good from what we've seen in the past. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm always happy to have an Allison-focused issue, and same goes for an Ileana-focused issue. Not that I expected there to be one in Uncanny, but that issue is as equally a Colossus issue as it is an Ileana one. Plus, he has a great speech at the end. I'm just going to move on to the Brood arc, which, as I mentioned earlier, is extremely good. For those who have read Uncanny before, you will know that this is actually the second Brood arc. The first one was back in the early 80s with issues 162 through 167, which is actually referenced here a couple times. This arc was actually teased back in issue 218 when Alex and Lorna found the crashed ship, and we are only now getting to the arc itself. This story makes great use of that gap in time in universe, explaining it as the Brood slowly infecting mutants all over Denver to create an army. The fact that the Brood in this arc are unknown to the host body's psyche and can take control at any point is terrifying, and that isn't really something we saw them do in the previous arc. Although, to be fair, we didn't really get a chance to see it, since most of it took place on Brood World, which then exploded, if I'm remembering correctly. Although we did have that one issue with Chuck, who was a Brood. I will say that as much as I enjoy this arc, it is mainly just an absolute action fest of Brood versus X-Men. And it does repeat one of the big plot points from the original story, that being Wolverine being infected and fighting it off with his regeneration. And I really like Havoc's reluctance to kill the Brood, because he's so concerned that the person inside will be killed, and that they could be saved, when actually they can't. The Brood have taken over that person is dead. But I like his reluctance to kill until it's absolutely necessary. With all that, this brings us to the Genosha arc, which was a complete surprise to me. Not only did I not expect Genosha to appear this early, but I also didn't expect it to show up as a fascist ethno-state where mutants are forced into slavery, grafted into protective suits that not only identify them as mutants, but also make them unable to naturally conceive children and live in camps away from normal humans, all so that the state can prosper And all of that is framed as some sort of noble sacrifice on the mutants' part, as if they get a choice in the matter. Yeah, as you might be able to tell, this arc's a bit fucked up. Not a bit, it's super fucked up. This arc has 3 separate storylines going on. We have Madeline and a girl named Jenny who get taken and are the catalyst for the whole thing. They get the brunt of what the mutants go through, while also slowly building up to Inferno and Maddie's turn to the Goblin Queen. Then we have Wolverine and Rogue, who are also taken and stripped of their powers, but manage to escape captivity and try to make their way out of the city. We spend most of our time with this pair, but what's really fascinating is that we actually get Carol Danvers' Psyche willingly given control of Rogue's body. And finally, we of course have the rest of the X-Men making their way to Genosha and arriving just in time for the final fight. I should also mention Philip and his father, the Gene Engineer, who you might be able to guess is the main antagonist. Philip, on the other hand, is Jenny's fiance, who is unaware of the atrocities his dad is up to in the government, until, of course, his wife-to-be is revealed to be a mutant. And then he gets picked up by Wolverine and Rogue and learns everything. Once he does, he actually rebels against the status quo and his father, advocating for a society that is free for both mutants and humans. And is the only reason the X-Men don't go through with their correct plan to burn the entire state down. There is a lot to cover here, but first and foremost, I want to talk about the Logan Carol dynamic. We've had bits and pieces of it, although it's been a while, because Carol, if you remember, used to be an associate of the X-Men, so she was just kind of around for a while before she became binary. We've had a little bit of it there, and we've had Carol's personality peek through Rogue from time to time, but I adore how immediately noticeable it is that Carol is in control instead of Rogue. Carol and Wolverine were both soldiers. They have this kind of mutual understanding of what's at stake, how to do what they need to do, the best ways to do that, all that stuff, and it's really, really great to see. And I also really liked seeing Wolverine on the back foot for once. Him not having his healing factor not only makes him vulnerable to damage, but it obviously really weakens him to the point where he would not survive without it past a few days, which is really fascinating because we're so used to him going ahead, kind of essentially being the scout, but without his enhanced senses and healing factor, he's almost kind of dead weight. Moving on from that, I also really, really enjoyed all of Maddie's stuff because we are getting closer and closer to Inferno, and she's getting bolder and bolder in the things she does. Now, technically, this whole started in the Brood arc after she punches the TV screen, gets electrocuted, and has a crazy, horrifying dream of her being replaced by Jean as Scott's lover, and then descends into madness with the help of Sim of all people. It's really weird, but really good. However, a good majority of that descent ends up happening here in this Genoshan arc. She also just starts developing powers. I don't think developing is the right word, but like possessing powers that can't be contained, I guess. Or what's the word I'm looking for? Categorized. Because at one point they try and like erase her mind a bit or something, these like, psychics and doctors, and she just says no and then unleashes a essentially psychic bomb so powerful it not only kills the entire room of Genoshans that are in there with her, but it's felt across the entire area by other psychics, as we see with Psylocke. It's crazy strong. And she just keeps getting like that bold constantly. Crazy. Inferno's gonna be nuts, I can already tell. I'm so excited. One weird thing though is that at the very end of this Genoshan story arc, she calls Havoc lover, and I think even kisses him. I might be wrong there though. I just find that very strange because they haven't really interacted much since the whole Outback era started, and especially not like that. I mean, they are both considered dead by the world, and Polaris is currently possessed by Malice and is the field leader of the Marauders. So neither of them really have a significant other at the moment. But it was just very abrupt. I'm assuming this is also her going like farther into that Goblin Queen persona, and we'll get more of that when we cover Inferno, or get more of an explanation on it when we go to Inferno. As that just makes the most sense to me. But I'm also not putting it against myself that I missed something somewhere. That's entirely possible. I don't have a lot to say on the X-Men side of things. They aren't in this a lot, and it's really just them figuring out where to go and then getting there. All in all, this is a great start to the X-Men's Outback era. Each story, whether self-contained or part of a bigger plot, was just a blast to read. This team is such a fun cast, and I think Claremont's really starting to hit his stride with these character dynamics, and is giving each one some good, solid development, whether it be an issue to themselves, or just scattered amongst the larger issues. The exception to this might be Betsy, who I feel hasn't gotten a lot of spotlight shown to her since the issue at the end of the Mutant Massacre, but maybe I'm wrong and I'm just forgetting something, or we just haven't gotten there yet. Anyways, let's finish this up with X-Men Annual 12, which is actually part 7 of the Evolutionary War annual event. This event happens across 11 annuals, starting with X Factor Annual 3 and ending with Avengers Annual 17. And before you get confused, I have not covered that X Factor Annual yet. That'll be coming in a couple weeks, because I'm not covering this event as a whole, as you might be able to tell. Yes, all 3 X-Men related annuals are a part of this event, but they only make up like a quarter of it. And at least based on this one for the X-Men, it's more of a theme than an event, because this main stories all feature the High Evolutionary in some way, but as far as I can tell, they don't interconnect or feed into the next. So there's kind of no point in reading like all 11 annuals, particularly like Punisher annual or whatever. I don't care that much, and they don't have the mutants in them, so I don't know, get fucked. This book actually has 3 stories. The main one has the X-Men team up with the High Evolutionary to defeat Terminus, or a version of Terminus, who was actually Grok, and then restore the Savage Land. The second has Mojo looking for replacements of the X-Men after their demise, and finding the X-Babies. And we get the story of Magda giving birth to Wanda and Pietro in the High Evolutionary's castle, and Wanda getting possessed by Chthon. Now, I know that last one gets retconned into oblivion, so I didn't need to read it, but it was fine nonetheless. This book's good. I didn't expect the main story to directly connect to X-Men Classic 22, both the reprinted story and the extra story, and we get the return of Magneto's Savage Land mutates from way back in X-Men 62, which is also surprising. We do get something else to add to the list of bad things Colossus has done. So underneath dating a minor and being a cheater, we also have Deadbeat Dad now. So there's that. Although, does he count as a deadbeat if he doesn't know it's his kid? Whatever, I'm sticking with it. Within the other stories, I don't have much to say about the third one, especially since it all gets retconned, like I said. The second one has a bunch of variant X-Men, which are super neat, and the appearances of the writing team, or the team on the book, which is kind of funny. I think Chris Claremont gets turned into a baby, or has a baby head now, which is concerning. Oh, we also get the return of Ricochet Rita from Longshot, who is maybe set up as the X-Baby's babysitter. I don't know. It's cool to see her again, but she's just kind of here. But otherwise, the second story is also good. I just kind of like when Mojo shows up. He's just fucking weird, man. All in all, this was a pretty great week of X-Men. Next week is back to the New Mutants, as we fill in their gap between events. So, I guess like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you then.